Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm your host, Ashra Allen, and today I am joined by Reverend Ahriana Platten. And Ariana is often referred to as an experiential theologian because she leans toward an understanding of the holy that is based on personal experience as well as subjective discernment of reality. Ariana is a business strategist and spiritual educator. She leads the Colorado Springs Interfaith Collaboration and has served as an ambassador and presenter at the Parliament of the World's Religions. Welcome, Reverend Ariana. We are so blessed to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, Ariana, as a reverend, how do you approach your work with the bereaved?
Open-heartedly, first of all. I think the experience of bereavement is different for each person. So it's valuable for me to just understand that going in. I think when you're working with people who are struggling with grief and loss, you can never expect it to be the same. It's different each time. So I try and go in open-heartedly. It's also important to me to understand the difference between compassion and sympathy and empathy, which are really three very different things. So you might think of compassion as what you have if you are in a hospital or with a midwife and a birthing mother. There's nothing you can do to make it better except be with the person who's having the experience. So empathy would say, let me feel this with you. And once we feel something with someone, we have a tendency to want to make it better, to want to fix it for them because it's hurting us. And sympathy says, I'm so sorry you went through this. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, which really is kind of fruitless when it comes to helping someone who's going through this. No amount of sorrow for someone else is going to change what they're experiencing. But if I can be compassionate and simply walk with them, then they don't feel alone in the process. And that's my objective.
I love that. And I've also heard that compassion is more action oriented, which I think is really helpful because it's true. We need to be given a place of agency and action, I think, in our grieving process. So if we can't access that, then being with someone who can is helpful.
And the presence. Compassion is a very present state of being. I am here with you. I am here right now, breathing with you. I'm not afraid of the silence that you might need or the pause. I'm not afraid of your tears. I'm not afraid of your anger, because anger is a very present and healthy emotion sometimes in this process. You have no need to worry about me. I'm going to be right here, no matter how you're feeling or what is coming from you in this moment.
That's so beautiful to hold the container in that way where all parts are allowed to show up, because I think that sometimes we're given these societal cues about how grief is supposed to look or what aspects of grief are acceptable and which ones aren't. And it's just beautiful to create a container and hold a container for it all to show up. So I'm wondering, what do you find most rewarding about your help when you're working with somebody who's in the grieving process?
I think kind of what you and I were just talking about, there's a normalizing of emotions that I find very satisfying. Having grieved myself and been through grief with lots of people, being able to acknowledge that any individual's grieving experience is entirely different from anyone else's. You're not expected to fit into a mold. You're not expected to do things a certain way. Those 5 steps of grief that we're all so familiar with are really related to if you receive a terminal diagnosis, much more than they are if you've struggled with loss or grief. And you might be grieving something different. Those don't really apply when you're grieving a divorce, for example. There are lots, or the loss of a job. So to help people understand that the way you grieve will be unique, and also that there are normal things that you'll experience along the way. Not that they have to be like everyone else or express like everyone else, but they're normal. So one of
Mhm.
those is most people experience some level of anger, and that anger can be turned in lots of directions. But the value of anger, most of the time people will say to you, oh, you're so angry, don't be angry, this is going to get better. And they'll try and pull you out of anger, because we think of anger as a tough emotion, as a harmful emotion. But
Mhm.
anger, when you're going through grief and bereavement, is a powerful and important step that allows you sometimes to muster up the energy to even move, because sorrow and depression and sadness make us want to sit on the couch and do nothing. And for that reason, a lot of times people who are trying to plan memorials, people who are trying to take next steps, settle estates, things like that, can find themselves very angry. And that anger will give them the energy. Anger is very energizing.
Mhm.
The the energy to move forward. So I try and normalize that a little bit and talk to them about it before it happens, and let them know that when it does happen, it's okay to say, whoops, sorry I'm angry. Let me take a deep breath and step back. But to not berate themselves or allow anyone else to tell them that their anger isn't worthy. So that ability, that experience, I think, is what I find satisfying, having as much as none of us want to go through time after time after time, or incident after incident with people. One of the blessings of being a minister is that we have experiences that give us insights into what most people will experience themselves when they go through this kind of thing. And those experiences allow us to normalize and give comfort before some of the tough moments appear.
Yeah, it's so necessary, I believe, to have ministering and counseling and just help, period, during the grieving process, because we all need assistance at that time. And like you said, it's going to look different for everybody. But I love that you're honing in on anger in particular, because it tends to be one of those emotions, as you said, that's kind of relegated to the negative, and yet it does have a value, as you stated. So, how beautiful to be given permission to feel what we're feeling, and at the same time to know that we can have some degree of, whether we call it control or just capacity with that emotion, that we don't have to be governed by it
Right.
entirely. And so, what role does spirituality play in the grieving process from your perspective?
Well, in going through this all these years, I often hear myself saying, I don't know how we would get through this if we didn't have some reference for the holy, something bigger than us, or some place that gives us comfort. I am not a subscriber to the belief that we should say things like, oh, God needed that person more than you do, or there's divine order, and whatever happened because it needed to happen. Those
Right.
things are not comforting. Those
Nope.
things are agitating and difficult to hear. And I think using broad-based words to be able to say whatever it is that you find sacred and holy, open yourself to that. It will come to you the way that you can receive it, and allow that sense of reverence, that sense of sacredness, that sense of the holy to simply comfort you, wrap wings a bit around you. I often will speak like about angelic wings, um, wrapping around you and simply helping to soothe you through these difficult times. One of the things that becomes really important to people at a time like this is, what's happened to my beloved? Where are they? Where have they gone? And I am not one for trite answers. I'm
Mm.
usually very authentic in that moment, and will share that I don't know. I have not walked through that gate, so I cannot provide assurances. What I can say is I have had personal experiences of loved ones who have passed over and left signals and signs for me. Things have happened. Um, one incident, when my grandmother passed away, I didn't know she had passed, but I woke up in the morning, and a statue that she had given me, very important to me, little porcelain statue, had fallen from the back of a shelf where I had it very well protected, and was on the floor when I woke up that morning in two perfectly broken pieces. And it should have shattered. It fell about 4 feet. It should have shattered.
Wow.
It was in two perfectly formed pieces, and I got up and looked at it and thought, Grandma's gone. And I called my mom and said, how's Grandma doing? And she said, oh, I talked to her last night. I was just about to call the nursing home and see how she is. And I said, okay, we'll make that call, get back to me, and let me know how she is. And she called back and let me know that she had passed away. So there are things that can happen, intuitive things that let us know our beloved has crossed into a different space, into some different time. And I that's as much as I know, and that's as much as I can share. So I think for me, there's great comfort in that spiritual sense that there is more than just this physical form.
Yeah.
That science will tell us the energy of us goes on. We don't know exactly where it goes or what happens. We have ideas. But I've certainly had experiences that confirm that there's something more than that. And I think that's much harder to hear if you have no spiritual base.
I think so, Ariana. And I remember when my father-in-law was passing, he turned to me and said, you're so lucky because you have something you believe in that will help you when your time comes. But I don't believe in any of that. He would joke and say, I just believe in pond scum. And I said, but Dad, do you believe in love? And he said, well, yes. And I said, well, you know, a lot of the world's major religions talk about God as love. So maybe you do know God better than you think. And I remember that was comforting for him, that even if we don't have, you know, a major world religion that we subscribe to, or even a codified personal spirituality, that most of us believe in love. And that really is the force that I think guides us best through the dying process.
And knowing that we don't have to have the answers for each person.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to have the answers. Those are answers we have to figure out for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering, what are a few concrete tools that you could perhaps offer to our audience for those who are actively engaged in the grieving process? What steps could they take, or tools that they could use here and now that you could recommend?
I think some of these, you talk about concrete tools, and I have a book I'll recommend, but some of these are not concrete. They're much more intangible tools. So one of those is giving yourself permission to change your mind.
Hmm.
You might say to someone anytime, and I usually say, give yourself a year. Give yourself a year to grieve. And at the end of the year, it's not that you're expected to stop grieving, but we invite you to come back to society a little bit. So the first year, give yourself permission to not go to a wedding, to not go to a baby shower, to not show up at your best friend's birthday party because you may not feel like celebrating. Or you may say, someone may invite you and you may say, oh gosh, that sounds great, I'd love to be there. And you may wake up the next morning and say, I can't go there. I can't. So when you do accept an invitation, simply accept it with a caveat and say, I'd really like to do that, and these days my moods change with the wind. Mm-hmm. So I say, if I can show up, I'll be there. And if I don't show up, please allow forgiveness for the time that I'm in this grieving process. And that helps them feel like they can say something up front. They don't have to explain. If you wake up in the morning and you don't want to go, you don't have to go. You don't have to do anything. The idea that we should grieve for 3 days and go back to work and everything should pick up is so difficult for us as human beings. So there are things that you'll have to do. What you don't have to do is be a social butterfly. Some people will want you to come out with them. Another tool would be choose your companions very carefully. Winston Churchill said, a real friend is one who walks in when everyone else walks out.
That's beautiful.
That's the friend that you're looking for. You're looking for the friend that you don't have to take care of during this time, that is going to come in and say, can I get you a cup of coffee? They know you're home well enough to make a pot of coffee without having to have you do it for them. Mm-hmm. They can be in your house and be quiet, bring a book, sit down, relax, and be available to you if you need something, but they don't require self-care. They don't require your care. They're capable of self-care. That's really valuable,
Sure is.
knowing what friends you can be in the quiet with,
Yeah.
because you won't want to speak. And be careful about the spontaneity of invitations. So what I mean by that is I have a friend who recently lost his son, and he was very good about asking people for a few days of quiet, and then immediately wanted people around and made a big invitation for people to come. I'm ready, come over. And by the end of the day, he and his wife were exhausted.
I'll bet.
Didn't know
Because
how,
everybody came, right?
and
Yeah.
didn't know how to kind of back out of the invitation to take a breath and move forward from there. So take things in small steps rather than big steps. If you want to see a few people, be judicious about who you invite. And then the book, I'm looking because I wrote it down so I would say it right. The
Mhm.
book is called The Wild Edge of Sorrow
Hmm.
by Francis Weller. And it, first of all, for those of us who appreciate wordsmithing, it's one of the most beautifully written books I have ever experienced.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah, because I'm an avid reader. But this is a beautiful, tender book full of things that will take you to your heart, ideas that will take you to your heart. There's very practical tools in it as well, but what I notice the most about it is it it turns its readers inward with good places of contemplation, and is a very soothing balm to read. So if you're a reader, that's a great idea. If you're a journaler, I invite you to have a journal for these moments and to write down your sorrows and your griefs, to write a letter to your beloved, and
Hmm.
maybe write a letter one day and write a letter the next day, and maybe write a third letter, or maybe your journal becomes an ongoing letter until you're done writing. There are things sometimes that need and are worthy of written expression.
That's a great idea. And I would offer, I remember I wrote a letter to my grandfather thanking him for absolutely everything. And though I had told him that before, I had actually put it into writing, and he died before I sent the letter. And I was so bereft. And then I was counseled by a friend to read it to him anyway, and then burn it or tear it up and offer it to the wind, and to trust that he would hear it. And that was so helpful for me to conduct some sort of ritual that way. So yeah, writing, I think even if you feel like you missed your chance, I just want to say, not necessarily that there's no time that we can't continue our conversation with our beloved.
Absolutely. And I think, when you talk about ritual, there are lots of different ways to have ritual. We have a tendency to do the first one, which is the celebration of life and all the great things they did and all of that. And that's wonderful for some level of closure for community. But
Hmm.
down the line, there are rituals that we can perform that are really valuable to us. For example, on the holidays, we might set an extra place at the table and just share a couple of stories about the person that we've lost. Or we might take a walk down a favorite path that was theirs, and just see it for them. Just walk and see it as though you were able to allow them to use your eyes. But you will see it in a different way because you have a different idea. And I think it's critically important, and I mean that word, crucial, that at the end of the first year, you celebrate for yourself and your family all of the firsts that you've been through, that you survived the year of firsts, the first birthday, the first anniversary of the death, the first anniversary of your marriage, the first Christmas, the first Easter, whatever the firsts are, the
Yeah.
first time you go to a festival or event without them. So that whole first year is incredibly challenging. And to celebrate for yourself and for those close to you that you survived that you got through it. So you can do that lots of different ways. One of the ways that I like to do it for families and with families is to give them all a white rose and to take them, if there is a burial site, to take them to the cemetery or take them to where the ashes were scattered and invite them to place the rose with or without words. But to actually have that kind of physical acknowledgement that we have moved through the first year and we have not forgotten and we will never forget. And even though our grieving will change because we've become stronger, because it's not that time makes the pain go away, it's that we develop the muscle to carry the pain differently. So that ritual to honor that we have moved through the first year, that we will never forget, and that we are stronger for this experience. That can be
That's so beautiful.
a thing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, Ariana. I love that. And I'm curious why the color white. I know when I was in India and in Nepal after the earthquakes that people would wear white when they were grieving, which was not what we saw, here in the Western world where people typically wear black. So can you tell me, I'm curious, what is the significance of the white rose?
For me, it's more the avoidance of other colors. White is purity, and white is sacred. Red is about love and tends to pull us back into, oh, he gave me that dozen red roses. Oh, what it tends to pull us to that place. Yellow is friendship and tends to pull us to a different place of relationship. White is about the sacred, it's about the pure, and it's, for me, it feels like reverence. It feels like a reverent and sacred color to use.
Beautiful. And I ask that because I think there is significance in symbology as we contemplate death and the grieving process. And I wanted to thank you for speaking about that first year because it really is a gauntlet. It's a thing. All those firsts. And I had never contemplated what it would mean to actually celebrate having come to the other end of that first year. And I also love that you stated sort of our capacity as a muscle, this idea that it is something we actually can grow and strengthen and get better at, so to speak.
And we will get better at it. And sometimes people believe that since I've already had 12 losses in my life, I can handle another one. And there's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
But every single loss is different. So it's a different set of muscles that we develop as we go along. Losses are different because of how they happened, because one is an accident and one is cancer, and one is the loss of the idea about your marriage going forward. So we do these losses differently. We develop different strengths through them, and mostly we come to a deeper level of self-awareness.
Yeah. I wonder if you would take a moment to tell our audience about there's a free gift that you're offering, and can you share with us a little what that is and how to access that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I would love for you to enjoy free meditation. It's called Abundant Health. And I think one of the things that comes from loss is our understanding of our own mortality, what it means to be human, and to have loss in our lives, and to someday lose this mortal shell for something different. So I was very blessed for a couple of years to work with an incredible talent, a gentleman named Armando Olivero, who was a student at Juilliard, had completed his education, is a remarkable, remarkable composer. And he
Mm.
did the music for this and a couple of other meditations that I did. So it's really quite stunning, and you can easily just go into the music and not even hear the words and just listen to all the different nuances. This is not your typical meditation with some kind of inane music at the bottom that doesn't sound like anything. This is an incredible orchestration that he created to go along with this, and the foundation, the wording of it, the foundation of this meditation is to have you come to a place of recognizing what it is to achieve abundant health, to open yourself to live abundantly in this physical form, so that when it's time to let this physical form go, you will have lived it well. You will have kept it, cared for this sacred temple, and have more confidence that your spirit moves to the next sacred temple, whatever that is.
That's so beautifully stated, and thank you for that generous gift. I love that too because I know when I've been engaged in the grieving process that relating to my own health and well-being was not necessarily easy. So to be led in a somewhat passive state, which is also really nice when it feels like there's not much we can manage, to have someone just take our hand and guide us through something that reminds us how to take care of ourselves, how to center in our own health and well-being. That just sounds like such a tremendous gift. I really want to thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And I'll include a link for that for our viewers. And Ahriana, how do people stay connected with you, get to know more about your work, become familiar with your ministry? I know you're in Colorado, but for those who are local, what can they do? And for those who are not, how can they dive deeper with you?
There are lots of different ways you can find me under Ahriana Platten on Facebook. What I always tell everyone is there aren't very many Ahrianas that are spelled like mine. My name is Ahriana, one N and an H at the beginning. So it is not Ariana, it's Ahriana.
Ahriana.
And so if you look up Ahriana, my website is ahriana.com. You will get a link to my website pretty quickly. You'll also find me on Facebook, and I am the senior lead minister at Unity Spiritual Center in the Rockies. Our website there is unityrockies.org, and you can go onto our website there and find links to various classes and offerings. So there's lots of different ways, but if you look me up on the website, I'm not, or if you Google me, I'm not hard to find.
That's wonderful. And I think I have another question just sort of coming up that I would love to ask you before we part. And that's just, we're going through such unprecedented times of loss right now, whether it's loss of our job, loss of life the way we knew it. It's and you know, right now as we're recording this with the Black Lives Matter movement, and a really trying time right now in our country, is there anything that just pops into the forefront for you of what to speak about this collective grief that we're all undergoing?
Absolutely. I wrote to someone yesterday and said, pandemic plus protests plus politics equals pooped.
It's so true.
There's so much, and we're exhausted. And so first I want to acknowledge for people that that is an appropriate response to be exhausted. I think it's interesting that sometimes we have to be at that kind of raw and broken open place for radical transformation to take place. Our shields are not fortified right now because we've been hit so many times. And so we are able to change right now in powerful ways. And I want to remind everyone that we came here to do this, that we are made for this time. You may not think you were made for this time, but if you are here right now, you are made for this time. And somewhere inside of you is the strength and the tenacity to be present. Nobody knows what is yours to do except you. And if you can simply be present in this moment and allow yourself to observe, you'll get called in a direction. It is not yours to do everything. It's each of us doing a little bit that gets us to where we're going. And the first place change has to occur is inside of us. So before you go out and try and change the world, take a little bit of time to reflect. That self-reflection will begin to show you what it is inside of you that can be changed, that will result in radical transformation.
That's so empowering. Thank you. And I love of all the P words you named, that presence is the one that offers balancing to all those other P words. And just that reminder to stay anchored in the present moment. There's a lot of power and healing there. Thank you so much for your time, Ahriana. I really value you and your ministry and the way that you give voice to healing and to connection to the divine. And I am so grateful.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I have loved every minute of being with you, Ashra.